Well, thank you, Eugene, for talking with me today. And the topic is stop day, or 24/6, or Sabbath, or the fourth commandment. They're all the same things. Tell me when, where, why, how you started paying attention to the commandment to remember the Sabbath, and we'll go from there.
It was circumstantial. I was a pastor. I was organizing a new congregation, and I was a competitor. And starting a new congregation was something totally new for me, and so I had to work really hard because I didn't want to fail. And those first years of being a new church organizer fed into my propensity to be a competitor. I've been a competitor since I was in diapers. And so starting a church was right down my alley. So I visited people all over the neighborhood and worked hard and called on people and raised money. And we got the church built, we got the building built, and people started not coming to church. We had maybe 150, 200 people by then, and people who had been there every Sunday since we started. I'd go see them. I'd say, something wrong? Did I offend you? And they said, no. I'm really glad you let me in on this. Who would have thought a bunch of nobodies like us could have made this? But don't expect me to be there every Sunday. It's fishing season, and I like to fish, and my wife likes to do wildflowers. And so I went to my supervisor, and I said, and in 6 months, attendance had dropped about a third, and I didn't know what to do. I went to my supervisor and said, told him what happened. He said, start a new building program. I said, you gotta be kidding. I just had a building program. We don't need no more building program. He said, that's the only language Americans know. You've got to have a goal. It's got to be concrete. Start a new building program. And so I left his office and knew I wasn't going to do what he told me to do, but I didn't know what to do. Mm-hmm. And so I went to some friends who were advisors, and then Jan and I went to the Poconos, to a retreat center. And a Quaker, Douglas Steer, was leading it. We didn't know it was a silent retreat. And nobody did. They didn't advertise it very accurately. So we couldn't talk, and especially not at meals. But then we met with Douglas Steer, who was a Quaker philosopher, and for a half an hour or an hour, I guess it was an hour with him. And he asked us how we lived our lives. And so we told him. And we said that we took a day off. What do you do on your day off? Well, we go bird watching and just enjoy ourselves. He said, well, that's a start. But a day off is a bastard Sabbath. You're leaving the most important part out of it. Birds are wonderful, woods are wonderful, but God is at the center of this. You're taking time out to be present to God. So we went back and we started doing that. And there are a lot of other things involved in the process, but over a period of about 6 years, that Sabbath keeping, Monday, we did it on Mondays. I worked hard on Sundays. And that kind of broke that competitive cycle. I realized that competition is wonderful for doing some things, but it has nothing to do with developing a congregation. That's a much more relational thing. There are no goals. It's being attendant, present to God and to his people. So that's how it started.
Tell me about what the difference is between merely taking off a day and being present for the Lord on that day, a holy day.
The place of the Sabbath is in the context of a work day, a work week. God works 6 days, makes what we have. We need a day to kind of look around and see what's happened and what's happening. And when I got the connection between work and Sabbath, suddenly everything starts to make sense because it's in the context of work. It's not an absence of work. It's paying attention to the work that's there that God has done and that I'm a participant in. So Sabbath is not a matter of keeping rules. It's a matter of changing your whole perspective on the world we live in. Is it a creation world, or is it a world in which I've made things, do things, marry people, bury people? That's only a very small part about it. I mean, this is a huge, huge creation, and I need to be attentive to it. And in being attentive to it, I can participate in it and not just watch it.
I explain this in my writing and the film that this is attached to, that in fact that day of rest every week makes the work more important and makes the work better. And the work is what we contrast the rest to. But I'm afraid in our society, people will still in their heads say, oh, there's another way to be more effective at work, as opposed to there's a very special thing that happens entering into this rest. And people are always looking, it seems like, for the rules about that, rather than the intent of what the Sabbath is about. But they're going to ask you, well, what do you do on that day, and what don't you do, and how do you hear from God?
Well, what we do is, this was more when I was a pastor for 30 years. Changes when you have a different kind of a job. Mm-hmm. But because Sunday was the work day for us, we took Monday as our Sabbath. And it was very simple. We packed a lunch. I preached on Sundays, and Jan did the meal preparation. So on Mondays, we reversed the roles, and I packed a lunch. We started this, by the way, after our children were in school. If you have children at home, you have to do other modifications. So and then we go to a trailhead. We were living in Maryland. All around us, within 20 minutes of our doorstep, there are maybe 20 or 25 trailheads along rivers, through the mountains. And we would go to a trailhead, and Jan would read a psalm as we got ready to go and pray, and then we'd go in silence for the morning, no talking. That was easier for me than for Jan. But we did that, had our binoculars, and we loved to watch birds, and but you know, everything else it's amazing what happens when you're shut up. You're not only not talking, you're hearing things that you never heard before. Mm-hmm. So we did that until 12 or 1 o'clock, and stopped at a rock or a log and broke open our lunch, and Jan prayed over the food. And then we started talking. We talked all the way back home. Talked about what we'd seen, what we thought, things back over the week in the church, some people, but it just was a gathering place. But it's amazing what it does when it comes out of the silence. You're not filling in things, you're gathering things. And then we'd get home by the time the children were coming home from school. And then the rest of the day was just, we puttered and fixed things. We only had 2 rules on Sabbath, is play and pray. And so the children didn't have to do anything. They didn't have to make their bed, clean up their room. It was a free day. And I didn't do anything that I had to do. for a pastor, there are things which you have to do because they're emergencies. Somebody dies, gets sick, it's an accident. But it's surprising how little that is if you have a structure to work in.
Mm-hmm. Did you ask for support from your parish, from your church?
Oh yes.
How'd you do that?
You can't do this by yourself. I think that's one of the most important things people need to know if they're going to try to keep a Sabbath. If you live in a Jewish community, especially a conservative Jewish community, it's easy because everybody's doing it. Mm-hmm. But we don't have rules. And there are a lot of instances in Protestantism, especially, where Sabbath keeping has become a legalistic thing. And it's not a Sabbath. It's keeping rules. Mm-hmm. And I think you pointed this out, Matthew, that when Jesus talked about Sabbath keeping or was living Sabbath keeping, he broke the rules all the time. He got in more trouble for breaking the Sabbath rules with the Pharisees than anything else he did. So it's not a matter of setting rules and then keeping them. It's a matter of entering a new imaginative, participatory way of being in the presence of God through Jesus and the Spirit, and developing a prayer life which isn't just saying prayers, but paying attention to the presence of God. Now, the one thing I did deliberately was I wrote a letter every year to my congregation, and why your pastor keeps the Sabbath. Mm-hmm. And I tell them why we're doing this, and I said, I need your help. You don't have to do it, but I need your help. If anytime you want to call me on Monday, you please just think, can I wait till Tuesday to do that? Mm-hmm. In 29 years with that congregation, I think maybe there were 10 times when somebody called me on Monday. It's amazing, but you have to have people on your side to do this. And I rewrote that letter, didn't copy it, just kind of rearranged it every year because, there are new people in the congregation, things change. But I had a whole congregation supporting me to do this. And I don't think you can do it by yourself. You have to have friends who are on your side, family on your side. I've said to many people that I think that single decision to keep a Sabbath made more difference to my marriage, my kids, my congregation, and my own life. Sabbath keeping is really important, but you've got to do it right. You can't do it by figuring out rules and I'll do this, I won't do this. Play and pray.